The world in 1914 was a tinderbox waiting to ignite. Europe, a mosaic of empires and nations, bristled with unresolved tensions. Nationalism surged through the continent, fueling rivalries and ambitions. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, on June 28, 1914, provided the spark that set the world ablaze. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, setting in motion a chain reaction of alliances that quickly engulfed Europe in the flames of war. The major European powers were locked in a complex web of alliances. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy formed the Triple Alliance. Facing them were France, Russia, and Great Britain, comprising the Triple Entente. These alliances, meant to maintain peace, ironically propelled the continent towards war. As nations mobilized their armies and navies, the world watched in disbelief as the fragile peace crumbled. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand was not the cause of the war, but the catalyst that ignited the already present tensions. Across the Atlantic, the United States watched the unfolding events in Europe with a mixture of concern and detachment. President Woodrow Wilson, elected in 1912, advocated for a policy of neutrality, believing that America should stay out of European affairs. This stance reflected a long-standing tradition of American isolationism, rooted in the belief that the United States should avoid entanglement in foreign conflicts. The American public, largely composed of immigrants from various European nations, was divided in its sympathies. The vast ocean separating the United States from Europe reinforced the sense of isolation. Many Americans believed that the war was a European problem and that the United States had no vital interests at stake. The country was focused on its own domestic issues, including progressive reforms and economic development. Wilson's call for neutrality resonated with many Americans who saw no reason to sacrifice American lives and resources in a distant war. However, maintaining true neutrality proved challenging. The United States had strong economic ties with Great Britain and France, and American businesses continued to trade with both nations. This trade, while beneficial to the American economy, also made the United States vulnerable to pressure from both sides of the conflict. Germany, in particular, viewed American trade with its enemies as a violation of neutrality. Despite the challenges, Wilson remained committed to keeping the United States out of the war. He believed that America could play a more constructive role as a mediator, working to bring the warring parties to the negotiating table. He hoped that by remaining neutral, the United States could preserve its moral authority and help shape the post-war world. However, events beyond his control would soon test his resolve and force him to reconsider America's position. The war in Europe raged on, with no end in sight. The initial German advance into France was halted at the Battle of the Marne, leading to a stalemate in the trenches of the Western Front. The war quickly devolved into a brutal and attritional conflict, characterized by horrific casualties and little territorial gain. The use of new technologies, such as poison gas and machine guns, added to the carnage. The United States, despite its official neutrality, found itself increasingly drawn into the conflict. German submarine warfare, particularly the sinking of passenger liners, tested American patience. The sinking of the Lusitania in 1915, which resulted in the deaths of 128 Americans, outraged public opinion and put pressure on Wilson to take a stronger stance against Germany. The Zimmermann telegram, intercepted by British intelligence in 1917, further inflamed anti-German sentiment in the United States. The telegram, sent by the German foreign minister to Mexico, proposed a military alliance against the United States. In exchange, Mexico would regain territories lost in the Mexican-American War. The revelation of this secret communication shocked the American public and fueled calls for war. Wilson, facing mounting pressure from the public and Congress, finally abandoned his policy of neutrality. On April 2, 1917, he addressed a joint session of Congress, asking for a declaration of war against Germany. He declared that the world must be made safe for democracy. With this momentous decision, the United States entered the Great War, forever altering the course of the conflict and its own destiny. The United States, a nation founded on principles of peace and non-intervention, clung to its neutrality in the early years of World War I. President Woodrow Wilson, a scholar and idealist, believed that America could serve as a beacon of peace, mediating between the warring factions and ultimately helping to restore stability to a fractured world. This vision of America as a neutral arbiter resonated with many citizens who saw the European conflict as a distant and unnecessary bloodbath. The American public, a melting pot of European immigrants, held diverse opinions about the war. Many German Americans sympathized with their ancestral homeland, while others supported the Allied powers, particularly Great Britain and France. This internal division further strengthened the argument for neutrality, as any overt support for one side or the other risked exacerbating domestic tensions and potentially tearing the nation apart. Wilson's commitment to neutrality, however, faced numerous challenges. The realities of global trade and international relations made it difficult for the United States to remain completely detached from the conflict. The warring nations, desperate for resources and financial support, exerted considerable pressure on the United States, testing the limits of its neutrality. The concept of neutrality, while appealing in principle, proved difficult to maintain in practice. The complexities of international law and the ever-shifting dynamics of the war created a challenging environment for the United States to navigate. As the war dragged on, the lines between neutrality and involvement became increasingly blurred, setting the stage for America's eventual entry into the conflict. Despite its official stance of neutrality, the United States maintained significant economic ties with both sides of the conflict. American businesses continued to trade with Great Britain and France, providing crucial supplies and financial support. This trade, while beneficial to the American economy, also made the United States vulnerable to accusations of bias and favoritism from Germany. Germany, facing a naval blockade by the British, resorted to unrestricted submarine warfare in an attempt to disrupt Allied supply lines. This tactic, while effective, also posed a significant threat to neutral shipping, including American vessels. The sinking of the Lusitania, a British passenger liner carrying American citizens, brought the issue of neutral rights to the forefront and sparked outrage across the United States. The Lusitania incident highlighted the moral dilemma facing the United States. While committed to neutrality, the nation also had a responsibility to protect its citizens and uphold international law. The German submarine campaign, with its disregard for civilian lives, challenged America's moral compass and pushed the nation closer to intervention. The economic and moral pressures on the United States intensified as the war progressed. The balance between neutrality and self-interest became increasingly precarious, forcing Wilson to confront the difficult question of whether America could truly remain aloof from the global conflict. The seeds of intervention were sown as the nation grappled with its role in a world at war. The Zimmermann telegram, a secret communication intercepted by British intelligence, proved to be a turning point in American public opinion. The telegram, sent by the German foreign minister to Mexico, proposed a military alliance against the United States in the event of American entry into the war. This revelation shocked the American public and fueled anti-German sentiment, further eroding support for neutrality. The Zimmermann telegram exposed the duplicity of German diplomacy and confirmed the fears of many Americans who believed that Germany posed a direct threat to the United States. The prospect of a German-Mexican alliance on America's southern border galvanized public support for intervention and strengthened Wilson's hand in his efforts to persuade Congress to declare war. In addition to the Zimmermann telegram, German submarine attacks continued to escalate, further inflaming American public opinion. The sinking of several American merchant ships in early 1917 provided further evidence of German aggression and strengthened the case for war. Wilson, facing mounting pressure from the public and Congress, finally abandoned his policy of neutrality. He recognized that America could no longer stand on the sidelines while democracy and freedom were under attack in Europe. His decision to seek a declaration of war marked a pivotal moment in American history, signaling the nation's emergence as a global power and its commitment to defending democratic values abroad. Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare campaign, a desperate gamble to break the British blockade and strangle the Allied war effort, proved to be a major catalyst in swaying American public opinion towards intervention. The U-boats, lurking beneath the waves, posed a constant threat to neutral shipping, including American vessels carrying vital supplies to Europe. The sinking of the Lusitania in 1915, with the loss of over 100 American lives, had already inflamed anti-German sentiment, but the continued attacks on neutral ships further fueled the fire of outrage. The German High Command, aware of the risks of provoking the United States, initially attempted to restrict submarine attacks on neutral vessels. However, the pressure to break the British blockade and achieve a decisive victory before American intervention became overwhelming. The resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare in early 1917 signaled a dramatic escalation of the conflict and brought the United States closer to the brink of war. American public opinion, already deeply divided over the war, began to shift decisively towards intervention as news of the submarine attacks spread. The sinking of unarmed merchant ships, often without warning, was seen as a barbaric act of aggression that violated international law and threatened American lives and interests. The cries for war grew louder, putting increasing pressure on President Wilson to abandon his policy of neutrality. Wilson, a staunch advocate of international law and peaceful resolution, found himself caught between his desire to keep America out of the war and his duty to protect American lives and interests. The submarine menace, with its blatant disregard for neutral rights, presented a direct challenge to American sovereignty and forced Wilson to confront the difficult reality that neutrality might no longer be a viable option. Section 2. The Zimmermann Telegram, a diplomatic disaster. The interception and subsequent publication of the Zimmermann Telegram in early 1917 proved to be a turning point in American public opinion. The telegram, a secret communication from the German foreign minister to the Mexican government, proposed a military alliance against the United States in the event of American entry into the war. In exchange for Mexico's support, Germany promised to help Mexico regain territories lost to the United States in the Mexican-American War. The revelation of this clandestine plot sent shockwaves through the American public. The Zimmermann Telegram, seen as a blatant act of German aggression and a direct threat to American national security, galvanized public support for war. The idea of a German-Mexican alliance on America's southern border fueled fears of invasion and stoked the flames of anti-German sentiment. The Zimmermann Telegram also exposed the duplicity of German diplomacy and undermined any remaining hope for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. The telegram, with its thinly veiled threats and promises of territorial gain, confirmed the suspicions of many Americans who believed that Germany posed a direct threat to the United States and its interests. The diplomatic fallout from the Zimmermann Telegram was immediate and severe. The telegram, a colossal blunder on the part of the German government, effectively destroyed any remaining sympathy for Germany in the United States and paved the way for American intervention in the war. The telegram became a rallying cry for war, uniting the American public against a common enemy and strengthening Wilson's hand in his efforts to persuade Congress to declare war. Section 3. Wilson's Call to Arms. On April 2, 1917, President Woodrow Wilson addressed a joint session of Congress, delivering a historic speech that would change the course of American history. Wilson, after years of advocating for neutrality, finally concluded that the United States could no longer stand idly by while democracy and freedom were under attack in Europe. He called upon Congress to declare war against Germany, arguing that America had a moral obligation to defend the principles of liberty and self-determination. Wilson's speech, a powerful and eloquent appeal to American ideals, resonated deeply with the public and members of Congress. He framed the war not as a conflict between nations, but as a battle between democracy and autocracy, between freedom and tyranny. He argued that America had a unique responsibility to defend the principles upon which it was founded and to make the world safe for democracy. Wilson's call to arms marked a decisive break from America's long-standing tradition of isolationism. He recognized that the world had become interconnected and that American interests were inextricably linked to the fate of Europe. He argued that American intervention was not simply a matter of national interest, but a moral imperative. Congress, swayed by Wilson's powerful rhetoric and the overwhelming tide of public opinion, responded swiftly to his call to action. On April 6, 1917, Congress formally declared war against Germany, officially bringing the United States into the Great War. With this momentous decision, America abandoned its policy of neutrality and embarked on a path that would transform its role in the world and shape the course of the 20th century. Section 1. Over there, the doughboys arrive. The arrival of American troops in Europe in 1917 provided a much-needed morale boost to the weary Allied forces. The doughboys, as the American soldiers were affectionately known, brought with them a fresh wave of enthusiasm and fighting spirit. Their presence signaled a turning point in the war, bolstering the Allied ranks and injecting new hope into the fight against the Central Powers. The American Expeditionary Force, under the command of General John Pershing, faced the daunting task of mobilizing and deploying a massive army across the Atlantic. The doughboys, many of whom had never left their hometowns before, were eager to prove themselves in battle. They represented a cross-section of American society, hailing from diverse backgrounds and representing all walks of life. Their arrival in Europe marked a significant turning point in the war, as the influx of fresh troops and supplies tipped the balance in favor of the Allies. The logistical challenges of transporting and supplying such a large force across the Atlantic were immense. The United States, despite its industrial might, had to overcome significant hurdles in order to effectively equip and deploy its troops to the European theater. The war effort required a massive mobilization of resources, both human and material, and tested the limits of American industrial capacity. Despite the challenges, the doughboys arrived in France ready to fight. Their presence, a symbol of American resolve and commitment to the Allied cause, provided a much-needed psychological boost to the war-weary Allied forces. The arrival of the Americans marked a turning point in the war, signaling the beginning of the end for the Central Powers. Section 2. Château Thierry and Belleau Wood, Proving Grounds. The battles of Château Thierry and Belleau Wood in the spring and summer of 1918 served as crucial proving grounds for the American Expeditionary Force. These engagements, fought alongside French and British forces, demonstrated the fighting prowess and determination of the doughboys. At Château Thierry, American troops played a key role in halting a German advance towards Paris, preventing a potential breakthrough that could have altered the course of the war. Belleau Wood, a dense and heavily fortified forest, became the scene of fierce fighting between American Marines and German forces. The Marines, outnumbered and facing determined resistance, fought with tenacity and courage, ultimately capturing the strategically important forest after weeks of brutal combat. The Battle of Belleau Wood became a symbol of American resilience and fighting spirit, earning the Marines the nickname Devil Dogs from their German adversaries. The victories at Château Thierry and Belleau Wood, while costly in terms of casualties, proved that the American troops were a force to be reckoned with. These engagements boosted the morale of the Allied forces and demonstrated the effectiveness of the AEF's training and leadership. The doughboys had earned their place alongside their seasoned Allied counterparts and were ready to play a decisive role in the final offensives of the war. These battles also demonstrated the effectiveness of American firepower and tactics. The doughboys, equipped with modern weapons and supported by artillery and air power, proved capable of overcoming even the most formidable German defenses. Their successes at Château Thierry and Belleau Wood served as a prelude to the larger offensives that would ultimately bring the war to an end. Section 3. Turning the Tide, Saint-Mihiel and the Meuse-Argonne Offensive. The Saint-Mihiel salient, a German-held bulge in the Allied lines, had been a thorn in the side of the Allied commanders for years. In September 1918, the AEF, now operating as an independent army under General Pershing's command, launched a major offensive to eliminate the salient. The attack, a well-coordinated operation involving American infantry, artillery, and air power, proved to be a resounding success. The Saint-Mihiel salient was erased in just 4 days, demonstrating the growing strength and effectiveness of the American forces. The Meuse-Argonne Offensive, launched just weeks after the victory at Saint-Mihiel, was the largest American operation of the war and a key component of the final Allied push towards Germany. The offensive, fought over difficult terrain and against determined German resistance, involved over 1.2 million American troops and lasted for 47 days. The Meuse-Argonne Offensive was a brutal and costly battle, but it ultimately succeeded in breaking through the German lines and contributing to the final collapse of the German army. The American contribution to the Meuse-Argonne Offensive was crucial in turning the tide of the war. The doughboys, despite their relative inexperience, fought with courage and determination, pushing the German forces back and contributing to the final Allied victory. The offensive, while costly in terms of casualties, demonstrated the decisive role that the United States played in the final stages of the war. The Saint-Mihiel and Meuse-Argonne offensives marked the culmination of the American Expeditionary Force's contribution to the war. These operations, involving massive numbers of troops and utilizing the latest military technology, demonstrated the growing power of the United States as a military force and its commitment to the Allied cause. The successes of the AEF in these final offensives played a significant role in bringing the war to a close. Section 4. The War in the Air and at Sea. The United States also made significant contributions to the war effort in the air and at sea. American pilots, flying alongside their British and French counterparts, engaged in daring dogfights against German aces, contributing to the Allied air superiority that proved crucial in the final stages of the war. The American pilots, though lacking the experience of their European counterparts, quickly adapted to the challenges of aerial combat and played a vital role in supporting ground operations and disrupting German supply lines. The United States Navy played a crucial role in escorting convoys across the Atlantic, protecting vital supplies from German U-boats. The American naval presence helped to secure the sea lanes and ensure the safe passage of troops and materials to Europe. The Navy's efforts were essential in maintaining the flow of supplies to the Allied forces and preventing Germany from disrupting the transatlantic lifeline. American destroyers and other warships helped to counter the German submarine threat, escorting convoys and hunting down U-boats. These efforts, combined with the development of new anti-submarine technologies, helped to turn the tide in the naval war and secure the vital supply lines to Europe. The American contribution to the war in the air and at sea, while often overshadowed by the ground fighting, was essential to the Allied victory. The efforts of American pilots and sailors helped to secure the sea lanes, maintain supply lines, and gain control of the skies, all of which were crucial factors in the final Allied triumph. The United States demonstrated its growing power and capability in all domains of warfare, contributing significantly to the ultimate defeat of the Central Powers. The First World War ended with the signing of the armistice on November 11, 1918, bringing to a close one of the most devastating conflicts in human history. The war had reshaped the political landscape of Europe, dismantling empires and redrawing national boundaries. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, once a major power, dissolved into a collection of independent states. The Russian Empire, weakened by revolution and war, transformed into the Soviet Union, ushering in a new era of communist ideology. The war's impact extended far beyond Europe. The Ottoman Empire, a centuries-old power, also crumbled, leading to the creation of new nations in the Middle East. The war had disrupted global trade, leading to economic instability and widespread hardship. Millions of people had been displaced from their homes, and the world faced the daunting task of rebuilding from the ashes of destruction. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended the war and imposed harsh reparations on Germany, fueling resentment and bitterness that would contribute to the rise of extremism in the years to come. The treaty, intended to create a lasting peace, instead sowed the seeds of future conflict by imposing punitive measures on the defeated nations and failing to address the underlying causes of the war. The world that emerged from the First World War was profoundly different from the one that had existed before. The war had shattered the illusion of European stability and ushered in an era of uncertainty and change. The old order had been swept away, and the world faced the challenge of building a new international system in the aftermath of unprecedented destruction. The United States emerged from the First World War as a major global power. The war had demonstrated the nation's industrial might and military capability, transforming America's role in international affairs. While initially reluctant to intervene in European affairs, the United States had played a decisive role in the Allied victory, earning a place at the negotiating table and a voice in shaping the post-war world. Wilson's vision of a new international order, based on principles of self-determination and collective security, found expression in the League of Nations, though ironically, the United States itself would ultimately refuse to join the organization. American industry had been mobilized to support the war effort, leading to rapid economic growth and technological innovation. The war had stimulated production in various sectors, from manufacturing and shipbuilding to agriculture and mining. This surge in industrial activity helped to propel the American economy to new heights, solidifying its position as a leading industrial power. The war also had a profound impact on American society. Women had entered the workforce in large numbers, filling jobs vacated by men who had gone off to fight. African Americans, seeking greater opportunities, migrated from the rural South to industrial cities in the North. The war had accelerated social and demographic changes, challenging traditional norms, and paving the way for future social movements. The United States, having demonstrated its military and economic strength on the world stage, could no longer afford to remain isolated from international affairs. The war had thrust America into a position of global leadership, and the nation faced the challenge of defining its new role in a rapidly changing world. The experience of the war had transformed America's identity and its place in the international order. While the First World War brought an end to the immediate conflict, it also sowed the seeds of future conflicts. The Treaty of Versailles, with its harsh reparations and territorial adjustments, created lasting resentment and instability in Europe. Germany, burdened by war debts and stripped of its territories, felt humiliated and eager for revenge. The treaty, while intended to create a lasting peace, failed to address the underlying causes of the war and instead created a breeding ground for future tensions. The war had also unleashed new ideologies, such as communism and fascism, that would challenge the existing world order. The Bolshevik Revolution in Russia had inspired communist movements around the world, raising concerns about the spread of revolutionary ideas. The rise of fascism in Italy and Germany, fueled by economic hardship and nationalistic fervor, would ultimately lead to the Second World War. The League of Nations, Wilson's vision for a new system of collective security, proved to be ineffective in preventing future conflicts. The United States, despite Wilson's efforts, refused to join the League, weakening its authority and undermining its ability to enforce international law. The League's failure to address the growing tensions in Europe contributed to the outbreak of another world war just 2 decades later. The First World War, while ostensibly fought to end all wars, had paradoxically created the conditions for future conflicts. The unresolved issues of the war, combined with the rise of new ideologies and the failure of international institutions, created a volatile international environment that would ultimately erupt into another global conflict. The legacy of the war was a world marked by instability, uncertainty, and the looming threat of future violence. The First World War left an indelible mark on the world, shaping the course of the 20th century and beyond. The war's impact is still felt today in the political landscape of Europe, the rise of new ideologies, and the ongoing efforts to promote international peace and cooperation. The war serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of conflict and the importance of diplomacy and understanding in resolving international disputes. The war also left a profound cultural legacy. The literature, art, and music of the post-war period reflected the disillusionment and trauma of the war experience. Authors such as Ernest Hemingway and Erich Maria Remarque captured the horrors of trench warfare and the psychological toll of combat. Artists like Otto Dix and George Grosz depicted the brutality of war and the suffering of its victims. The war's impact on culture continues to resonate today, serving as a testament to the enduring power of art to reflect and interpret historical events. Memorials and monuments around the world stand as silent witnesses to the sacrifices made during the First World War. These memorials serve as places of remembrance and reflection, honoring the millions who lost their lives and reminding us of the importance of peace. The poppy, a symbol of remembrance, continues to be worn on Armistice Day, a day dedicated to commemorating the end of the war. The First World War, a conflict that transformed the world, continues to hold lessons for us today. The war's legacy is a reminder of the fragility of peace and the importance of working together to prevent future conflicts. The sacrifices made during the war should not be forgotten, and the lessons learned should guide us in our efforts to build a more peaceful and just world.